showing us a way forward, especially in the digital age that we are in. I would now invite Shri Vineet Nahata, Director of Power Guild Treasuries, our partner of today's conference, for a short presentation.
It's great to be in front of all of you. I thank Cunsult for giving me an opportunity to interact with you. My name is Vineet Nahata. I run a debt market outfit called Power Guild Treasuries. We happen to be in the business of treasury management. This is a small presentation about what we do, and then I'm going to elaborate about the Indian fixed income market, how Indian fixed income market happens to be the hottest investment destination globally as well as for the Indian investors. This is what we do. We basically cater to provident fund trusts, superannuation and pension funds, charitable trusts, religious educational institutions, corporates and individuals, FIIs, NRIs, and public bodies like clubs, schools, hospitals, universities, which are run by public money. So safety, wherever safety and security of capital is of utmost importance, we are there. And we facilitate the investment in government securities, PSU bonds, central and state government guaranteed bonds, corporate debentures, zero coupon bonds, tax-free bonds, etc. These are all direct instruments, bonds and securities, where the investor can invest directly and there is a direct relationship with the issuer. There is no intermediary in between. So this was a brief idea of what we do. We make your hard-earned money work harder for you by leveraging money's power of compounding. Now, my next presentation is about the Indian sovereign debt market. How the Indian sovereign debt market, Indian government securities and bonds, happen to be the most sought after and the most rewarding investment avenue at this juncture for Indian investors as well as for the overseas investors. I'll just run you through a snippet of these the news flashes regarding our economy and regarding the global economy and how India is going to be benefited. Indian economic ecosystem is going to be benefited by the developments which have been happening. First of all is the Fed rate cut of 50 basis points announced 2-3 weeks ago by the Mr. Powell, the Fed Reserve Chair. The second news says that Indian foreign exchange reserves are right now at the record high of 684 billion, and this is by far the highest foreign exchange reservoir we are holding. Our armories of dollar is at its peak right now. Next. The previous one. Now, this news says that the investment in Indian private corporate debt by the foreign institutional investors and our domestic institutions like mutual funds, insurance companies, provident fund, etc., they happen to be at its highest now. Next. This is a very important development. One of the greatest beneficiaries post the G20 event, other than hospitality sector and the aviation sector and the tour and travel, happens to be the Indian sovereign debt market. Post the G20 event, JP Morgan Sovereign Global Bond Index announced that they are going to make India a part of their emerging market index, and the allocation is 10% of the total portfolio. So the amount is roughly $25 billion, which JP Morgan is going to invest in India. This is a very big development because post JP Morgan's decision, host of other institutional investors like BlackRock, Bloomberg, and now very recently Barclays, they have decided to bring in big chunks of money. And other than this, various pension funds and various foreign portfolio investors, they have increased their allocation in the Indian debt market. 25 billion was initially announced, and post that, right now we are expecting around 3.5 lakh to 4 lakh crores of foreign investment in Indian sovereign debt by these institutional investors. The other thing is that at the home level, our inflation also has sobered down. The WPI has reduced to 1.5%, and the wholesale price, the WPI is 1.5%, and the CPI is roughly 3.5%, whereas the RBI's threshold limit happens to be 4%. So now we feel that there is RBI has some elbow room to reduce interest rates. Our fiscal deficit right now is very benign. According to the latest figures released, this is very much on track, and it's well under control. So reduced fiscal deficit means that the supply of government bonds through auction is going to be limited. I'll just run you through that what is the demand supply scenario in India as far as the Indian bonds are concerned. Next. This has been the Indian government securities bond yield curve, which is around 6.71 now. Today it is 6.78 because of the global landslide yesterday, which has happened because of the tension in the geopolitical situation. Dollar is also up today. Our GSEC yields are also up today. This data is a week ago. Next. This is the US 10-year GSEC bond. It is 3.8%. Ours was 6.7%. Next. This has been the last 3 months performance of Indian GSEC. Our yield has fallen from 7% earlier to around 6.71% now, which is 30 basis points. Next. In the US, it has fallen around 1%, from 4.8 to 3.8. So we still have around 70 basis points of rally left in government securities. When yields fall, the bond prices rise. So if in India, as far as the global cross-country arbitrage scenario is concerned, we are lagging behind by 70 basis points. So 70 basis points means on a longer 70 basis points on a longer bond horizon means at least 4 to 5% price appreciation. Next. Next. Yes, this is a very important thing. Dollar has depreciated against its global peers, mainly European currencies, by around 4%. The highest dollar yield, this dollar index is the measure which quantifies in percentage terms the sensitivity of dollar towards other global currencies. So global index has fallen from 106 to presently 101. So the dollar has depreciated against the global currencies by roughly 4%, whereas against Indian currency, it has appreciated by roughly 3.5%. Next. Yes. This illustration shows that primarily the Indian investors, Indian investors are investing in bank fixed deposits. Now, right now, bank fixed deposits are offering extraordinarily high yields. Some of the private banks are offering 8% plus, but that is for only 1 to 1.5 years. So there is a reinvestment risk which is there. Once the deposit matures after 1.5 years, the reinvestment is going to take place at a much lower rate. If you invest in sovereign government debt for a longer horizon, you are going to lock in a higher rate of return for a considerably longer period of time. And as interest rates keep falling in the market, the bond price is going to rise. So we are expecting around 15 to 16% annualized return, comprising of 7% interest plus 8% capital appreciation in bonds. So the idea was basically to introduce the concept of Indian sovereign government securities, and this happens to be a very safe and a very lucrative investment avenue, mainly for institutions where public money is involved and capital erosion cannot be considered under any circumstance. So hope my presentation is useful for you, and in case of any query, please feel free to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nahata. Coming up next, our regulatory sector, electricity. For our session on Wired for Change, Powering India's Energy Transition with Regulatory Reforms, we have on the panel Shri Arun Goyal, Shri Alok Kumar, and Shri Khurshid Ahmed Ganai. We welcome you all. Welcome our distinguished panel to grace the stage. Shri Arun Goyal is the former member of the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, a retired IAS officer. He's held influential positions at the state and central government levels for nearly 4 decades. With a strong background in public policy, regulatory affairs, and strategic planning, Shri Goyal's career has been Prime Minister's office and Principal Secretary Power in the Delhi government, where he helped stabilize Delhi's power reforms. His expertise extends internationally, having represented India in economic and commercial affairs as Minister at the Indian Embassy in Tokyo. Shri Alok Kumar is the former Power Secretary to the Government of India and Chair of the G20 Energy Transitions Working Group. With over 2 decades of experience in the power and industrial sectors, Shri Kumar has been instrumental in driving key reforms, particularly in India's electricity and renewable energy landscapes. As CEO of the Uttar Pradesh Power Corporation, he led one of the largest power utilities in India, navigating complex regulatory challenges and expanding renewable energy initiatives. Prior to his tenure in the power sector, he held several significant positions within the Indian government as Principal Secretary in Uttar Pradesh and Development Commissioner in the Ministry of Textiles. Shri Khurshid Ahmed Ganai is the former advisor to the Governor of Jammu and Kashmir and a distinguished IAS officer. With over 35 years of exemplary service, Mr. Ganai has held several key positions, including Chief Information Commissioner of Jammu and Kashmir, Principal Secretary to the Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, and senior roles in the Union Ministries of Home Affairs and Information and Broadcasting. He was awarded the Chief Minister's Gold Medal in 2007 for his outstanding contributions to public welfare and development. The session will be moderated by Shri Khurshid Ahmed Ganai. Sir, I request you to initiate the discussion by giving the participants.
Thank you, Aga, for inviting me here. Being a batchmate, he sent me the invitation about, is it working? Sorry. Raghav sent me the invitation about this function, about this conference. And I told him, I said, I want to attend to actually hear all the experts here. Then his second question was, why don't you also moderate? Because I told him, yes, I could do that. I am not an expert on any of the subjects that is listed there. But I have an outsider's view of the electricity sector, so I can moderate that sector. I have 2 experts here, and they'll be fielding the questions. I'll just give an introduction of the sector. It's like this: recognizing the importance of electricity in the development of the country, India has from the beginning been laying emphasis on power generation, its transmission and distribution. We have come a long way in all the three. As on 31st March 2024, the installed capacity of generation was 4,41,970 megawatts. This was 6.2% more than 3,99,497 megawatts as on 31/3/2022. The installed capacity includes fossil fuel as well as non-fossil fuel, with share of fossil fuel capacity being 55.03%, renewables including hydro at 43.12%, and nuclear at 1.8%. During 23-24, the peak power shortage was 1.4% and energy shortage was 0.3%. I've taken it from your annual report of the Power Ministry, as compared to 4% and 0.5% respectively during the corresponding period in 2022 and 2023. Power availability has increased to 23.5 hours for urban areas and 22.5 hours for rural areas. India is world's largest synchronous grid by adding 1,94,208 circuit kilometers of transmission lines and 7,20,534 megavolt amperes of transformation capacity since April 2014 to March 2024, with inter-regional power transmission capacity of 1,18,740 megawatts, thus achieving one nation, one grid, one frequency. Government of India's schemes over the years and the recent scheme of Saubhagya have taken electricity to every home in the country. There may be some rare exceptions here and there. The challenges in generation, transmission and distribution will continue with rising per capita electricity consumption. As the country adopts go electric with major shift from petrol and diesel to electrical vehicles, the challenges will increase. The main challenges for which there would be a discussion, and we'll start with questions. I have 5 or 6 questions for the experts. The main challenges in my view before the power sector are continuously augmenting the share and size of the renewable energy over the next many years, in fact over much of this century, of hydro, solar, wind, waste to energy. Then second, integrating the renewable energy into the grid, its transmission and green energy corridors, and through green energy corridors, etc. The third main challenge will be challenges in distribution, which are already there, and getting the best from the current scheme, which is an immediate challenge, from the RDSS, Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme, whose outlay is 3.04 lakh crore for improvement of the distribution sector, and this outlay is between 21-22 to 25-26, and thereby helping the DISCOMs to improve the operational efficiency and financial sustainability. Fourth, energy conservation is a challenge, which also includes enhancing energy efficiency across the board and implementation of PAT, perform, achieve and transfer. And lastly, the regulation itself. Regulation will continue to be a major challenge for the electricity sector. With these initial remarks, we go to the questions for the panelists, Shri Arun Goyal and Shri Alok Kumar. The questions themselves point to the challenges before the power sector in the country. And the first question I have, one of them can take, I think Mr. Goyal could take, or Mr. Alok Kumar. You can choose between the two. We have set an ambitious target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel generation capacity by 2030. What is the present status, and are we likely to achieve the target by 2030?
Thank
Goyal.
you. Like, you know, the two major targets that have been set by our Prime Minister, the international fora, are that we're going to have 500 gigawatt of renewable energy, renewable capacity, installed capacity by 2030. And another target is that 50% of our total energy that we use, that will come from the renewable sources. Now one has to see that where we stand today. So as against now, just because of the audiences from the all different sectors, that this target has been set for the 500 gigawatt, so this is for the non-fossil fuel energy. So earlier, general parlance, renewable energy used to be solar, wind, or say biomass. But now in the international parlance, it also includes the hydropower and also includes the nuclear power. Because, I mean, they do not emit the carbon dioxide, I mean, which results in climate change. So the target set for ourselves is 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel. So against that, we are roughly at 208 gigawatt. So if you see 2030, it's only around 5-6 years away from now. So that essentially amounts to adding 550 gigawatt of capacity every year. So if we look at what we have done in the last few years, last year it was only about 20 gigawatt. Before that also around 17-18 gigawatt. So getting to 500 gigawatt will not be so easy, but it's something which is not impossible. Now, what are the main challenges? What we have seen is, I mean, the framework has been set by the government. The policy direction is in the right direction. Regulators also, they have made their regulations which are in line with the policy so that we are able to encourage the renewable energy. The capacity is being added, lot of bidding is taking place, but there are challenges that are being. So first challenge that we have seen recently is that even though number of projects have been bid, but corresponding power purchase agreements and power sale agreements are not getting signed. And it is taking time, and approximately I think 30-40 gigawatt of such PPA, PSAs are there which are yet to be signed. So there is by and large a little reluctance on the part of distribution companies to sign these agreements. So this is one of the major issues that is being faced. And then how we really see that bidding will keep taking place, but until unless you sign the PPA, PSAs, then there could be issues. Now, other thing which is also very important is how do we integrate this renewable energy into our grid. Now, as these renewable sources of power, say wind or solar, they are intermittent in nature. When they are intermittent, they are like, we'll have the solar power when only the sun is there, and the wind also is there when the wind is blowing during the night time. Solar is there during the daytime. Now, but whereas we have seen a very distinct change in the demand pattern. Earlier, the peaks used to come during the daytime. Earlier days when I used to work in Delhi, it used to be say 2 o'clock, 3 p.m. in the night. But now that thing is happening during the night time, and it's mainly because of the disposable incomes that are increasing in the country. People are using more and more AC usage, and now the peak demand is coming in the sector during the night time between say 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., 10 p.m. So this is the now second peak that is coming. Yeah. Now during this time, we do not have the solar power. So until we are going to concentrate only on solar and wind, then how do we meet power during this time? So for that, the battery storage, pump storage has to be encouraged, so that during the daytime when we have say solar power, so that power can be used to store that power in the batteries, and during the night time when the solar energy is not there, then those batteries can be used for getting the energy.
Well, sir,
so this is
we'll come to this again. I think there is another.
So another challenge in this sector is regarding the, just one more point. Okay. Well, on the transmission sector, I just want to point out that in the transmission also we have a problem, because these areas where we have the solar or wind power, they're concentrated in few states. Where are the consumption points, say in Delhi? I mean, we have to get power from Rajasthan in case the solar power is to be used. So the huge transmission lines have to be laid. So when we are laying these transmission lines, it's challenging to get the ROW, getting the clearances, and then this solar and wind power generation that can come up in say typically 18 to 24 months, whereas transmission lines can take anywhere from 3 years or more. So that mismatch issues are also there.
No, these
so
are
I
the,
think I'd like to end
these
here.
are some of the issues, some of the problems. See, we are talking about 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel generation capacity by 2030. I think Mr. Alok Kumar will bear me out, and you also said this is supposed to be 50%. It means that our installed capacity in 2030 will be 1000 gigawatts. No? As against, that is what you need to clarify. Because the target was 50%. As against 4,41,000 megawatts, which is 4.41 gigawatts right now. So that is what he said, it will be difficult. Good that you said it will be difficult. You want to say something?
Yeah, thank you so much. So let me first compliment Cunsult to have organized this and having brought us here. And my colleague Arun Goyal sahab has very nicely described the very important issue of the sector. First effect, as our convener was mentioning, the official nationally determined contribution of India is the 50% of the capacity would be from non-fossil fuels by 2030.
Yeah.
Our capacity is expected to be in the range of around 770 to 800 gigawatt. So from that measure, we need to have around little less than 400, and that is most likely to be achieved. But as I agree with Mr. Arun Goyal that it is very difficult to reach 500 gigawatt. But it is not that material. If not to 30, if we achieve to 32, because we have to go a long way by 2074. Here we are. I want to make few points about the general regulatory issues in power sector, because sectoral issues, of course, are endless and very long list. There are two major issues in the sector. In the last few years, what we have seen, Ministry of Power has issued a large number of directions to the regulator, policy directions. And there has been a very strong view that why the ministry should give so many directions and the regulator should have its own space to work. Because I was there in the ministry when these were issued, so I have got some insights and I want to share this with you very briefly. The issue is the regulatory accountability. If you go and see the website of FERC, the counterpart of CERC in US, they have a 100-page action plan vision statement on their website. What they're going to do in all major details, what are the key issues in the sector and how they're going to deliberate and resolve it in that time frame. On the contrary, if you see the CRC's annual report, the agenda for the next year is 1/3 of a page and 7 bullets that what are the draft regulations they are going to bring, which are already in the public domain. So issue is, ministry should not have the occasion to give such detailed directions to regulatory commission. At the same time, the regulator has to be alive. That what are the major issues the sector, and they should commit themselves publicly that okay, we will resolve these issues in next 1.5 years by these methods, and they should commit to it. If they make a public their action point, there will be no occasion for such large number of policy directions. Second point I want to make is, like, electricity sector is one sector where you have one market, national market, one grid where the players interact every second and they're scheduled every 15 minutes on the same grid. But you have 28 regulators regulating that. And this has become most important because you are now aspiring to have a lot of foreign investment. And they will enter into India, they have to move around the 28 regulatory commissions, and it's a nightmare. You talk to any foreign investor. So I agree there has to be some state-specific aspects, but the sector needs far greater harmonization in the state regulatory approach, which is again the task given to CERC through Forum of Regulator. They're trying to do a lot. We need to go a long way. I've got one small suggestion to make. I was trying in my tenure, but I could not complete. Ideally, ministry should not do it. Some reputed research institution should annually bring out a rating of SERCs on certain parameters, how they are behaving in terms of ease of doing business, the visibility of their charges, their approach in terms of, say, grandfathering. Whenever you raise the charges, you don't do it for the incumbent projects. The transparency, because in the regulations, because all the investors, you're asking 500 gigawatt, lot of capacity will come through open access. But when you go to any open access investor, he says, I'm not sure what my state regulator will do next year. I can't make my investment decision. So this is one area which we need to address. For 500 megawatt, there are 4 issues which you need to address, all the regulators put together and policymakers. Topmost is the demand management in terms of the time of day tariffs. If we keep on pumping solar energy to the grid and we don't shift demand from non-solar to solar, India will end up having a very costly electricity by having large space or storage. We have to shift demand. That is not happening in states. Second is the domain of CERC. If you want to have an investor here, he wants to be certain about the markets. CERC imposed a cap in the power exchanges 2 years ago. They are still continuing. Nowhere in the world you impose a cap and you continue for 2 years. You need to be very transparent and rule bound. Like stock exchanges, that cap will come into in this circumstance and will go away in 6 weeks or 4 weeks. You can't have such uncertain markets that we are having in India. This is not helping storage to come in. Third important thing is we have to increase the renewable energy, but more important, we have to increase the overall capacity in the system. Otherwise, we will go to the era of the shortages and blackouts. Resource adequacy is one thing in which SERCs are completely lacking. They have to force the distribution companies to procure enough capacity, and CERC has to promote capacity markets, because it's an era of the flexible power systems, not the era of the coal power plants where you have the rigid PPAs. They are existing for 25 years. And one last thing about the storage I want to say. Mr. Goyal referred to the large transmission systems being made from Rajasthan, Gujarat. Why? Because government introduced the waiver of transmission charges initially for scaling up, but it continued with it for too long. It is a major distortionary parameter in power sector of India. If you give somebody a transmission line which is costing you 1 rupee 60 paisa per unit, you give him free of charge and you socialize that, he will never think of storage. We are killing storage by not acting rightly, timely about in our policy dispensation. So what I say, talking of the sectoral issues, most important issue is we need to have a dedicated regulation for storage and power system. They are a very different type of technology. They are both generation, they can replace transmission, they can help distribution, they can do arbitrage, they can do ancillary services. Part of it is regulated, part of it is market oriented. It's very complex. Currently in CERC regulations, battery things are spread on 10 regulations. If somebody is coming from abroad to invest in storage, he is completely confused what is happening. So friends, 500 gigawatt will require more funding from Government of India. If we depend on these backdoor subsidies through transmission charge waivers, it is not going to work. It is increasing the cost of renewable integration for state utilities in India very significantly. If you want to achieve 500 gigawatt, even going beyond, Government of India will have to give more money for VGF and subsidies. Otherwise, DISCOMs will not be able to pass on this cost into consumer tariffs. I'll stop here. I'll wait for the
Oh, yeah.
discussion. Thank you.
Arunji, do you want to add something to the distribution, the regulation in distribution?
Okay, yeah, just
How it
before
will- how
I
it will
say
improve?
On the distribution side, since I mean we were on the different sides, like he's spoken on the as a power secretary, but I think we have to look at the overall scheme of the things. Firstly, electricity is a concurrent subject. When it's a concurrent subject, most of the work that is being done on the distribution side, that falls under the domain of the states.
State electricity.
So we have done quite well as far as the generation is concerned, because that's on the central side, and that's like as a regulator also that has been encouraged. Similarly, on that interstate transmission, lot of work has been done. But fortunately or unfortunately, when your constitution prescribes that the distribution is under the concurrent list, and it's such a big, plays such an important role in the political economy of the country, so I mean there are limitations to the extent I mean things have happened. I think Alok was not there in the initial session, I mean where we generally talked about the regulatory landscape in India. So there Mr. Ajay Tyagi very clearly said that I think that mindset is still not developed, that there has to be a distance between the power ministry or say ministries and the regulators. And whatever one might say, so a lot of, I mean, these directions were issued, but there are a lot of judgments are also there, and these directions when they're issued, this has been very clearly mentioned that they are not binding in nature, but they are only guiding in nature. So the regulators, in their best wisdom, they do it. I mean, it's not a single man body, it's a 4-person body. So I think I'll leave it at that. So as regard the distribution, I've been involved in the distribution, being the principal secretary in Delhi for on 3 occasions. So this is something the most crucial part of the power sector. So if you look at the present scenario, of course, number of changes have taken place, and Alok has played a very important role in those changes. And again, even though it's a concurrent subject, some rules have been made which become binding on the state governments and the regulators. So to that extent, a lot of changes have taken place. But the fundamental problem with Indian distribution sector is the difference between the average cost of supply and average revenue realized. So I'm just giving you the figures
Arunji, I have another question for you, which is linked to this. New power market regulations have been notified in 2021. I was discussing this with you. How were they different from the earlier regulations, and what are your views on market coupling of exchanges?
Okay, you want to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. So now coming to power markets, in India at present there are 3 power exchanges are there, and still the share of power markets is only about 7% in the overall energy, I mean the number of units that are consumed. And within this 7% also there are different products. So in the new regulation that came up in 2021, lot of changes had taken place. So in the earlier regulation there was a provision that in case one power exchange is not able to get a share of 20% within 2 years, then either it has to close down or it has to merge. However, this thing has been done away in the present regulations, and I mean there's no one can stop an exchange from getting closed down, but otherwise that it has to have a share of 20% in 2 years, so that has been done away with. So now what we are seeing is that in particularly 2 products which are there, day ahead markets and real time market, which constitute around say 70% of the power that is transacted in the power exchanges, the share of one particular exchange is very, very high. This is around 97-98% as compared to the other exchanges. Therefore, in this 2021 regulations, there was a provision made that there could be market coupling and also a provision for market coupling operator. What does market coupling mean? It essentially means is that whatever bids are received, buy bids and sell bids in the different exchanges, they are combined together, and thereafter then a uniform price is determined after combining all the bids that are received in the different exchanges. Now there are a lot of pros and cons of this, and in the industry there are differing views, and we all know that IEX, it's doing very well in the stock market, its share is also booming. that whether this coupling should be there or not. So as a regulator, we brought out a consultation paper, we call it staff paper, and which was there in the market, and lot of comments have been received on it, and it's on the both sides. The advantage is that we'll have one uniform price for all the exchanges, then the transmission corridor utility will be very, very efficient, and other than that, we say the economic surplus, consumer surplus and the producer surplus, that will also get maximized. On the other hand, exchanges say that, particularly IEX, they believe that in case it is done, then the role of exchanges would be merely to getting the bids and getting them combined. So there will be very little incentive for the innovation. So at present, what we have done is that we are running a shadow pilot on market coupling, which is run by Grid India, which is a system operator, which is being done on a historical data to see that whether we are actually getting the benefit out of market coupling. And then they are also developing an in-house software so that as and when a decision is taken to couple the markets, then they can take on over. So here also there is a debate whether the market coupling should be done by the Grid India system operator in the government sector, or there should be an outsider who should be a market coupler. So I think I'll leave it at that. So this is a very, very,
Alok, you
I
want to
think,
say
controversial and debatable
on
issue.
the
here.
general network access and integrating renewable energy
Yeah,
into
actually,
the
sure.
grid?
Say, the Electricity Act in 2003 brought out this very novel concept, a very important concept of open access. Open access means that you have, say, open access in transmission to the common being the common carrier, and other open access in distribution. But GNA relates to the open access on transmission lines. Earlier system was that there are two requirements: you get connected to the system, connectivity, and then you have to obtain an open access, long-term open access, medium open access, short-term open access for every type of contract. It was very cumbersome. And when you want to have a customer, then you have to say in which region your customer will lie. So changing regions was very cumbersome. GNA is a very novel concept. It says once you are connected to the grid, you have access to the whole grid in one go. You can change your customer every day. And it is a boon to all the developers and generators, because once you are connected to the grid, then you get access to all the consumers in the India, say all your customers in India, all distribution companies. There are very clear rules how to get connectivity, who will get preference and all, and also the transfer of connectivity, and also say cancellation of connectivity, surrender of connectivity. So I'll say GNA has really integrated the Indian market and has really enhanced the ease of doing business for power sector players in India. It's a very good progressive forward step. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for the panelists?
Can we please have the mic?
Former Vice Chancellor of K.R. Mangalam University and a consultant and worked for 6 years in Ministry of Environment for the environment clearance of the industry projects. My question is, at one place we are still giving coal mines to people here. We are talking of non-fossil fuel. At the other point, we are, like European Commission has already said that they are going to have 600 gigawatts of electricity by 2030, purely by solar. On the other hand, in India, in 2012, when I was in the committee, the solar production, which is made by pure silicon, 99% pure silicon, the project was not given in India due to certain reasons. They were not environmental, but somehow. Still, there is no progress on the solar side so far. How you are going to, do the needful of 500 gigawatts if you have that kind of, regulatory problems?
500 तो बताया इन्होंने उतना possible नहीं है.
आपको very simply, you have mixed up many issues. So let me try to resolve it. See, first thing, correctly, India has made spectacular progress in solar capacity addition. you see the rate of growth. It is recognized world over. About coal, India has never said and should not say that we will phase out coal by this date, because it's a matter of energy security. What we have committed is the reduction in emission intensity that India is achieving in advance. Every country is entitled in using the fuel they have. US is using gas, we have coal, we are using coal. Our solar addition, I mentioned to you, and Mr. Goyal also mentioned to it. The challenge lies in the additionality of the cost involved in integrating renewable energy. It is not that simple. Solar is not 2.5 rupee when you integrate. It becomes more than 5 rupees. Because there are cost of ancillary services, the cost of balancing costs, there are cost of network costs. So if you have to ramp up solar, now as the penetration goes up, you will have to put up more storage. So that all developing countries are saying in the world fora, if you want to ramp up solar energy, you need concessional financing to take care of the increase in the costs, because India being a country of lower middle income households, it cannot afford costly energy. It will be against our national growth aspiration. In nutshell, we can discuss it in one time.
Just two schemes. One is the Har Ghar Bijli. You have the 1 crore solar panels with great deal of subsidy. The second is the Kusum scheme for the pumps. Can you tell us more about Kusum scheme?
Sir, I am talking of the production of solar blocks. I am not talking of the production.
Solar modules you are talking?
I am talking of the solar modules.
Say, India has increased now its solar module manufacturing capacity has crossed around 60 gigawatt per annum. It's enough. In cell, we are around 6-7 gigawatt, and soon it will touch 25 gigawatt PLI scheme. Challenge lies in the backward integration of the wafers and say ingots and the polysilicon. So say any technology, if you want to develop ecosystem, it takes 10 years or 15 years. Let's wait. I'm very sure in next 4-5 years, India will be also very substantially say self-reliant even in the ingots and wafers, polysilicon also. That is the one reason we cannot accelerate our energy transition without accelerating the local manufacturing. It is against our energy security and also our need for providing jobs for our youth. So it's a very complex issue, energy transition. You have to mix of regulatory issues, you have the local manufacturing issues, you have our fuel security issues. So there are many issues involved.
Last one,
Yeah.
I'll take a. You see, you have to understand that at present, India's per capita consumption is 1/3 of the world's average. And as compared to developed countries, it is 1/10. And we are growing rapidly, and energy consumption is increasing. Last year, it was approximately 10% increase. So earlier, a view was taken, say 7-8 years, thinking was like, we will just be able to do with renewable energy. Now with the storage capacity is not coming up and still being expensive. So we have, our plans have got changed, and now we are going to add 88 gigawatts of solar, coal energy, thermal power plants in the next 7-8 years by 2032. So ultimately,
Thank
until
you very
unless
much.
you have the storage things coming up very fast, so this.
Thank you
will
very
have to
much.
be-
There is a big project. Hello. I think that there is a project he might be knowing. Ladakh is going to produce very big, 13 gigawatt, and that is going to be transmitted to the rest of the country, because by itself it uses about 20 megawatts or no, more than that, 100 megawatts at the moment.
5 gigawatt capacity and 12 gigawatt is storage. So it will
Yeah.
shine the storage.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Many powerful insights emerging from this session. We thank our erudite panelists for the same.
Chaliye, sir.